Hey guys, I've been thinking about making another video analyzing the game design of Danny's World. I sure do hope the creators don't get exposed for being as incompetent as I thought they were. Oh, bad timing, I guess. This video is basically an analysis on how the design of a game and how the creator acts directly influence how the fandom acts. We're also going to be analyzing Danny's World at the end as evidence for my claims. First off, we need to take off our silly caps and put on our serious caps. Because I can't go any further talking about this without mentioning the currently unaddressed allegations against Quelver. No, this is not a drama video, I just need to get this out of the way since I make fun of Quell a lot in this video and it'd be super disrespectful to the victims if I just ignored this. There are timestamps in the description if you want to get back to the silly game design stuff, but otherwise, let me explain to the best of my ability what Quelver has done besides being a terrible game dev. Basically, last month, someone who used to work under Quell spoke out about how Quell abused them. This essentially boiled down to Quell doing some genuinely heinous stuff like forcing people to moderate while on chemotherapy, alongside lying about knowing her co-dev was drawing CSAM. There was also a second doc which is even more telling about the abuse happening under Quell. The quality assurance guy who removed their section from the doc due to a cease and desist from Quell stated that they were basically forced to work overtime during the Halloween update after their dog died because there were like 2 testers. Which honestly makes perfect sense if you look at the game for more than 5 minutes. There's also an anonymous testimonial of someone who interacted with Quell in VR chat where Quell proceeded to bully them for their art style and make fun of them stimming. Keep in mind these are all allegations and aren't proven to be true just yet, though it's been weeks since the allegations were released and there is still no response. The only real thing of note to happen is one of the victims getting a cease and desist. You should probably refrain from supporting the game until things are actually cleared up. I also am not the most educated on the subject, so I may need to make some corrections in a pinned comment. Wait, breaking news. There was a response? Let's read it. It's 3 pages of Quell sympathy farming to the community to get them to play the next update instead of addressing the allegations. Why am I not surprised? Okay, allegations time is over. Let's get back to the silly shit. Yeah. There are some things we need to consider before explaining how Quelver failed. Is there a way to control what your fandom is like? How do you communicate effectively with a large fan base? Is depending on your fan base to make major decisions for your game bad? I'll try to answer all of these questions to the best of my ability. Has your game ended up with a pretty shitty fandom? Well, that's kinda your fault. How your fandom acts is at least partially dependent on how your game is designed. Made a competitive game with the only way to win being relying on teammates? Well, now you have a bunch of toxic people who bully anyone who's mildly bad at the game. Made a story-based game with chapters that only release every once in a while? Well, now your fanbase's expectations are insanely high and they're theorizing constantly. Good luck making a game that lives up to the hype if you aren't Toby Fox. Made a game with bright and colorful characters and a gameplay loop so simple and tedious that anyone with an ounce of taste will write it off as slop? Good job, you are now a babysitter for 5 million iPad babies who will kill you if you change anything. The platforms you release your game on also affect this. Releasing your game on PC will generally give you a more mature audience than if you release your game on mobile or Roblox. People who play exclusively mobile games are the lowest common denominator and shouldn't be catered to. That's right, I'm racist towards mobile players. What are you gonna do about it? Text me and call me a slur? Sleepy already does that every day! Honestly, it's pretty predictable what kind of fandom your game will get if you just look at how it's designed and how much you emphasize certain parts of game design. Really, the easiest way to not have a bad fan base is the usual solution to all bad game design. Actually planning out your shit. You should know who your game is supposed to appeal to and who will be playing it. Though I should mention, you shouldn't exclude yourself from the equation here. If you're making a game meant to appeal to an audience that doesn't include you, you're either thinking about games as a way to make money, not an art form, which is bad, or you're gonna get burned out from doing something that isn't inherently fun to you, which is also bad. This doesn't mean you shouldn't take the feedback of others though, as with all art, feedback is what actually helps you improve. Interacting with your fan base can be a way to keep people actually interested in your game without constant updates. People generally like it when you tell them about how the game is going and what you have planned. You obviously shouldn't spoil everything, especially for story-based games, but little teasers will help the fans stay engaged during longer waiting periods. You can also do communication in other ways, mainly developer commentaries or devlogs. Developer commentaries are personally something I really love to listen to, especially if it's coming from a really skilled game designer. Hearing how the game evolved and ended up in its current state is just a really interesting thing to a lot of people. You could even go the extra mile and do what Valve did, making a fully playable developer commentary showcasing how certain mechanics evolved over time and the thought process behind every choice. Devlogs are essentially the same as that, but instead used for updating your community on how the game is going. These can be really useful for getting people excited and helping people to understand how certain mechanics work. Being active in your community is just an objectively good thing to do as a developer. Wait. What? I'm talking to Roblox developers? Never mind! Stay away from your community! Please don't become Rocks 2 Electric Goomaloo! Communication is a two-way street. Your fans also want to tell you stuff about your game. There can be valuable stuff to gain from this, like constructive criticism and new ideas for features. You should have avenues for fans to interact in this way. The issue here is that not everyone is a good game designer. You should not be relying on your fans to design your game for you. You have to be able to tell when an idea or a piece of criticism from a fan is flawed. Let's make up a scenario here. You're making a precision platformer. You just released it and are getting the first wave of feedback on the mechanics. You open up a review. The person is saying the progression of the game is flawed and doesn't offer much beyond going to the next screen after dying a bunch. They suggest adding an upgrade system to allow you to get stronger over time and beat levels easier. Would this be a good idea? No! It completely goes against the core design of your game. The progression comes in the form of getting better at the game and being able to take on tougher challenges. I could give real examples of suggestions like this. Take a look at these actual serious suggestions from my friend's game Sweet Lab. Main takeaway here is you need to know your game's core design philosophy well enough that you can actually pick out when a suggestion is bad. Quell failed at all of this. Well, she didn't exactly fail, she just succeeded in fostering a pretty bad fandom. Let's look at the main critiques that can be given to the Danny's World fandom and explain the root cause. Spoiler, it's the developer's fault. The fandom excludes new players from a lot of things. This is directly caused by the game's meta progression. Of course you'd exclude people playing objectively worse characters than you from your run. They are literally just a dead weight to the team. This is also related to stuff like the speed stat and how that's balanced, but I won't get into that as I've already talked about how the game has mismanaged that in previous videos. The fandom acts like the devs can do no wrong and every decision they make is the best. This is because of how the developers communicate with the player base. Quell has always presented herself as this uwu cute silly type person in essentially all of the game's marketing. This has generally led to a lot of people infantilizing the dev team and saying stuff like they're trying their best and be grateful. I think this is also related to the fact the game has a super young fan base. The internet and cringe culture has taught a lot of kids that if you like something that has flaws, then you're stupid for liking that thing. Said kids haven't matured enough to understand that they can like something and criticize it at the same time. This is why so many Danny's World fans will attack you for saying anything in the game sucks. I do want to point towards Zessie Jesus' video on toxic positivity and the TF2 fandom, as I feel this perfectly represents this specific aspect of the Danny's World fandom and fandom culture as a whole. The fandom is against any sort of change. I think this is caused by the fact that developers listen to all backlash and always comply. Remember the time the devs reverted a buff to Twisted Pebble because it made him harder to distract? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. By the way, I'm not saying Pebble was well designed. He's literally numbers difficulty, the Delver-like entity. This aspect of the fandom has generally led to the game remaining in the same state for over a year. The core loop is broken on a fundamental level and the devs won't fix it because there will instantly be outcry. It could also be related to the devs just being straight up lazy, but that's unrelated to the video. Finding the right kind of people to cater to is really just the pick your poison. You could cater to children and get a bunch of free money at the cost of having to babysit a bunch of autistic 12-year-olds and protect them from predators. You could cater your game to a much older audience of gaming enthusiasts, which gives you a pretty mature community that will self-regulate at the cost of you being held at a higher standard. I hope this video helped some people understand why fandoms form in a specific way. I encourage you to go out and analyze your favorite games to see how their general fan culture is affected by the factors I talked about here. Of course, I'm not the biggest authority on this, and none of these are hard rules, so definitely do your own research if you want to delve deeper into this topic. Either way, that's all I got. Bye.